I knew my wife was cheating on me, but I had no proof. Until one day I received a bank notification about a strange purchase at a hotel, the same day she was working late. Instead of causing a scene, I decided to play the long game. And its ending turned out much worse than she could have imagined. Sarah was always the perfect wife. At least that's what I thought. Her work as a nurse with night shifts, taking care of the kids, that smile that made me feel like the luckiest man alive, it all seemed picture perfect. We'd been married for 8 years, and I still got butterflies when she'd surprise me with lunch at my office or send those little, thinking of you, texts during her breaks. But something changed in the past few months. The changes were subtle at first, so subtle that I questioned whether I was imagining things. The way she'd angle her phone away when texting, how she started taking longer to respond to my messages during her shifts. Small things, really. Things that could be explained away by stress at work or simple coincidence. Then came the late-night shifts that didn't quite add up. As an accounting manager at one of Seattle's largest hospitals, I had access to the staff scheduling system. I never thought I'd need to use it to check on my own wife, but something felt off. The night she said she was covering for Jessica in the ICU, Jessica was actually on vacation in Hawaii, according to her very public Instagram posts. I didn't confront Sarah. Something inside me, maybe pride or fear, held me back. Instead, I started paying attention. Really paying attention. The way she'd spend extra time getting ready for normal shifts. The new perfume she started wearing, something she claimed was a gift from her coworkers for her birthday. The mysterious gym sessions that left her hair surprisingly perfect. The confirmation came on a rainy Tuesday evening. I was going through our joint bank statements, a monthly ritual I'd maintained since we first got married, when I saw it. A $237 charge at the Grand Marriott downtown. The date matched perfectly with one of her late shifts. My stomach lurched, but my hands remained steady as I dug deeper. Credit card statements revealed a pattern: sporadic charges at upscale restaurants during her lunch breaks, small purchases at boutiques I'd never heard of, and most damning, 3 separate hotel charges over the past 2 months. Each one coincided with her extra shifts. That night, as Sarah slept soundly beside me, I made my move. Her phone was face down on the nightstand, always face down these days. I knew her password was our anniversary date, but she'd changed it recently. However, she'd set up Face ID for convenience, and in her sleep, her peaceful face was all I needed. The phone unlocked with a gentle blue glow. The messaging apps were clean, too clean. Not a single suspicious text. But she'd forgotten about her recently deleted photos folder. There, in the digital graveyard of erased memories, I found them. Dozens of photos. Sarah with a man I'd never seen before. They were in restaurants, hotel rooms, and one particularly gut-wrenching image showed them together in a bathroom mirror, his hands possessively on her waist, her smile brighter than any she'd given me in months. I took screenshots of everything, sending them to my secure email account. Then I began to dig deeper. The man in the photos had a name badge in one picture. He was a patient at the hospital. Robert Mitchell, according to my research, a wealthy real estate developer who'd been admitted for routine surgery 2 months ago. Right around when Sarah's behavior started changing. Instead of confronting her immediately, I formulated a plan. A methodical, calculated response that would make sure Sarah understood the full consequences of her actions. First, I needed to secure our finances. We had a joint account where most of our savings lived, money we'd been putting aside for a dream house. Over the next few weeks, I slowly transferred funds to a new account she knew nothing about. Not everything, I left exactly $500, enough to make it look like normal spending had depleted the account. Next came the legal preparations. I found Diana Castro, the most ruthless divorce attorney in Seattle. Her reputation for handling infidelity cases was legendary, and her initial consultation confirmed why. She helped me gather evidence, document everything, and prepare for what was coming. The third phase of my plan targeted Sarah's career. The hospital had strict policies about staff-patient relationships, with immediate termination being the standard response. I compiled a detailed report, photos, dates, hotel receipts, everything that proved their relationship began while he was under her care. The HR department would find it very interesting. But I wasn't done. Robert Mitchell, I discovered, was married. His wife, a prominent local philanthropist, had no idea about his dalliance with my wife. I made sure all the evidence was ready to be sent to her as well. Weeks passed, and I played the perfect husband. I listened to Sarah's lies about work, nodded sympathetically when she talked about difficult patients, and even surprised her with dinner reservations at her favorite restaurant. All while my plan moved forward like clockwork. The day everything came together was surprisingly ordinary. Sarah came home from her shift, still wearing that new perfume she thought I hadn't noticed. I was sitting at our dining room table, a manila envelope placed precisely in the center. "What's that?" she asked, her voice carrying a hint of concern. "Divorce papers," I replied calmly, watching her face carefully. She laughed, actually laughed, though I caught the nervous edge in it. "Is this some kind of joke?" "No joke, Sarah." I placed her phone on the table, unlocked it with her sleeping face earlier that day, and opened the photo gallery. "Care to explain these?" The color drained from her face as she saw the images, all the ones she thought she'd deleted. Her hands started trembling. "James, I can explain, it's not what you think. Actually, it's exactly what I think. And there's more." I slid another envelope across the table. "You've been terminated from the hospital. Effective immediately." Her eyes widened in shock. "What? You can't, they can't." "They can, and they did. Staff-patient relationships are strictly forbidden. You knew that. HR received all the evidence this morning." She grabbed her phone, presumably to check her work email. Instead, she found herself staring at our joint bank account balance. "The money, what happened to our savings?" "Gone," I said simply. "Just like your job. Just like our marriage. Just like the trust you threw away for a few nights at the Grand Marriott. You can't do this to me." Her voice rose, panic setting in. "We have a life together, we have plans." "Had plans," I corrected. "You changed those plans the moment you decided to sleep with a patient." "Oh, and speaking of Robert, his wife received quite an interesting package of information today. I imagine that's going to make things complicated for both of you." Sarah collapsed into a chair, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. "Why didn't you just confront me when you first found out?" she whispered. "Because you needed to understand what it feels like to lose everything at once. Just like I did when I saw those photos." I stood up, gathering my coat and keys. The house keys I'd already had copied were on my new keyring. I'd moved most of my essential belongings to a new apartment over the past week while she was at work. "I'll have my lawyer contact you about the rest of the divorce proceedings," I said, walking toward the door. "Oh, and Sarah?" "The security cameras I installed last month caught some interesting footage of Robert's visits here. I'm sure his wife's divorce attorney will find those useful too." The last thing I heard as I closed the door was the sound of Sarah's broken sobbing. Part of me felt a twinge of sadness. 8 years of marriage deserved at least that much emotion. But as I walked to my car, I felt something else too: freedom. The rain had stopped, and the Seattle skyline glittered in the distance. I had just blown up my entire life, but somehow, I felt lighter than I had in months. Maybe revenge doesn't heal all wounds, but as I drove away from the home we'd shared, I couldn't help but smile. Sometimes, justice is its own reward. That night, I checked into the Warwick Hotel downtown, a different place from where they'd met, thankfully. As I sat at the hotel bar, nursing a bourbon, my phone buzzed continuously with messages from Sarah. I read each one without responding. The progression from anger to bargaining to desperate pleading was exactly what I'd expected. Please come home. We can talk about this. You're being cruel. This isn't you. I'll explain everything. Just give me a chance. What about the kids? Think about what this will do to them. The last message made me laugh bitterly. We didn't have any kids, we'd been trying for years without success. The fact that she'd throw that emotional manipulation at me just proved I'd made the right decision. Around midnight, a text from an unknown number appeared. This is Robert. We need to talk. I blocked his number without responding. Let him deal with his own imploding marriage. My sources told me his wife had already changed the locks and contacted her attorneys. Patricia Mitchell was apparently even more methodical in her revenge than I was. The next few days passed in a blur of meetings and paperwork. Diana, my divorce attorney, was thrilled with how well I'd documented everything. Most clients come to me with suspicions, she said during our morning meeting. You've brought me a complete case on a silver platter. Sarah tried to come to my office, but I'd already alerted security about potential harassment. They turned her away twice. The third time, they had to threaten to call the police. I watched from my window as she stood in the parking lot, makeup streaked with tears, looking up at the building like a lost child. For a moment, my resolve wavered. Then I remembered the photos of her in that hotel bathroom, her smile bright and cruel, and my heart hardened again. The hospital's response was swift and merciless. Not only was Sarah terminated, but they were considering legal action to protect their reputation. Apparently, Robert Mitchell wasn't the first patient she'd been inappropriately involved with, just the first one who'd been caught. The HR investigation uncovered 2 other possible relationships from the previous year. Each revelation felt like a fresh betrayal, unraveling the fabric of our entire marriage. A week after I left, I met Patricia Mitchell for coffee. She was elegant and composed, though the shadows under her eyes betrayed her pain. We compared notes, filled in gaps in each other's timelines, and shared a grim laugh over how our spouses had thought they were being clever. Robert's trying to claim it was a midlife crisis, Patricia said, stirring her latte. As if that excuses everything. 23 years of marriage, and he throws it away for a nurse half his age. Sarah's telling everyone I'm having a mental breakdown, I replied. That I imagined the whole thing and need help. Patricia's laugh was sharp and bitter. They really do read from the same playbook, don't they? Robert's been calling my sister, claiming I'm unstable and paranoid. Unfortunately for him, I have copies of everything you sent me. We spent 2 hours sharing stories and strategies. Patricia had already frozen their joint accounts and was moving forward with her own divorce proceedings. Her attorney was coordinating with Diana to ensure our cases complemented each other. By the time we finished our coffee, we had a pact: neither of us would back down, no matter what emotional manipulation our spouses tried. The fallout continued to spread. Sarah's family, who had always treated me like a son, was devastated. Her younger sister Claire called me, sobbing, to apologize for something that wasn't her fault. Their mother, who had battled cancer last year with both of us by her side, couldn't even speak to either of us. The weight of Sarah's betrayal had shattered not just our marriage, but an entire family's trust. Work became my sanctuary. I threw myself into projects, stayed late at the office, and took on extra responsibilities. My colleagues noticed the change but were tactful enough not to mention it. Only my boss, Michael, pulled me aside one day to make sure I was okay. "You're doing great work," he said, "but don't lose yourself in it. Take some time if you need it." I assured him I was fine, but his words stuck with me. Was I losing myself in this revenge? Had I become so focused on destroying Sarah's life that I'd forgotten to rebuild my own? That weekend, I finally went back to our house to collect more of my belongings. Sarah had apparently moved in with her friend Jessica, the same one who'd been covering her shifts. The house felt hollow, memories echoing off empty walls. Photos of our wedding still hung in the hallway, mocking me with frozen smiles and promises long broken. As I packed my books and records, I found a card Sarah had given me on our last anniversary. To my soulmate, it read, "Thank you for making every day an adventure." The words felt like acid now, burning through the paper and into my heart. I sat on my bed and finally let myself cry. Not for the marriage I'd lost, but for the person I'd been before all of this, trusting, open, capable of love without suspicion. A notification lit up my phone, an email from Diana. The divorce proceedings were progressing faster than expected, thanks to all our preparation. Sarah wasn't contesting anything, probably hoping to avoid more details becoming public. Robert, on the other hand, was fighting Patricia's divorce with everything he had. His reputation in the real estate world was taking a hit, and several investors had pulled out of his latest project. I should have felt triumphant. My revenge was complete, executed perfectly, with maximum damage to everyone who had betrayed me. So why did victory taste so bitter? That night, in my sterile apartment with its rented furniture and blank walls, I opened my laptop and started writing. Not about the revenge or the betrayal, but about everything that came before. How we met in college, when Sarah was still in nursing school and I was struggling through accounting classes. Our first apartment, barely bigger than a closet, where we'd shared dreams of a future together. The way she'd held my hand at my father's funeral, anchoring me through the worst day of my life. Writing it all down felt like performing an autopsy on our marriage. Each memory was a clue, each happy moment now tainted with questions. Had she been faithful then? When had she first looked at another man and thought about crossing that line? Had I missed signs that could have prevented all of this? Around dawn, my phone buzzed with another text from Sarah. "I know what I did was unforgivable. But I hope someday you can understand that I never stopped loving you. I just lost my way." I stared at the message for a long time, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Finally, I typed a response, my first communication with her since that night. "The opposite of love isn't hate. It's indifference. And I'm almost there." 3 months passed. Spring turned to summer, and Seattle shed its gray shroud for long, sunny days that felt almost cruel in their brightness. The divorce was finalized with surprising speed, thanks to Sarah's complete capitulation to my terms. She'd found a job at a private clinic in Portland, a significant step down from her hospital position, but at least she was still in medicine. Robert and Patricia's divorce, on the other hand, had turned spectacularly ugly. He'd tried to hide assets, which only led to more aggressive investigation from her lawyers. Each revelation seemed to uncover new lies, new betrayals. Patricia kept me updated, our strange friendship forged in shared pain becoming something unexpectedly valuable. "You know what the worst part is?" she said during one of our now regular coffee meetings. "I'm not even sad anymore. I'm just tired. Tired of discovering that every happy memory might have been a lie." I knew exactly what she meant. Each day brought new revelations about my life with Sarah, moments I had to reevaluate in light of what I now knew. The Christmas she'd insisted on spending at the hospital because they were short-staffed, had that been real? The girls' trips with her nursing friends, how many of those had actually involved Robert, or others? The revenge I'd orchestrated had been complete, but it hadn't brought the satisfaction I'd expected. Instead, it left me with questions that had no answers, and a hollow space where trust used to live. One rainy evening in late August, I ran into Sarah at our old favorite coffee shop. I'd stopped avoiding our usual places, refusing to let memories dictate my movements through the city. She looked different, thinner, older somehow, with none of the radiant confidence that had once drawn me to her. "James," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You look well." "You don't," I replied, not unkindly. She attempted a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I deserve that. I deserve all of it, really. I just..." She paused, clutching her coffee cup like a shield. "I never thanked you." Thank me. For what? Destroying your career. Emptying our bank account. Exposing your affair. For not dragging it out, she said quietly. For making it quick and clean, like ripping off a bandage. I've watched what Robert's putting Patricia through, all the fighting and legal battles. Your way was, more merciful, in a way. I laughed, a short, harsh sound that made other customers turn their heads. Merciful wasn't what I was going for. I know. But sometimes our actions have meanings we don't intend. She started to say something else, but I held up my hand. Don't. Whatever justification or explanation you want to give, I don't need it. Not anymore. As I turned to leave, she called out, "Are you happy, James?" The question stopped me. I turned back slowly, considering my answer. I'm not unhappy. And that's more than I could say in those last months with you. Walking home that night, I reflected on everything that had happened since that first suspicious bank notification. The methodical way I'd orchestrated Sarah's downfall, the cold satisfaction of watching her world collapse, the unexpected emptiness that followed victory. I'd gotten everything I wanted, executed my revenge perfectly, but the cost had been higher than I'd anticipated. My phone buzzed, a text from Patricia asking if I wanted to grab dinner. We'd been spending more time together lately, two broken people helping each other reassemble the pieces of our lives. Nothing romantic, just the comfort of someone who understood exactly what you'd been through. I texted back, "Rain check. Need some time alone tonight." Her response was immediate and understanding, "Of course. Take care of yourself." At home, I opened my laptop and looked at the document I'd been working on, a letter to my younger self, the man who had stood at the altar with Sarah 8 years ago, full of hope and trust and dreams. I added a final paragraph. You'll think revenge is the answer, and maybe it is. You'll execute it perfectly, destroy everything she built, make her feel the same pain she caused you. But here's what they don't tell you about revenge: it changes you too. Every calculated move, every cold decision, every moment of watching someone suffer, it leaves a mark. You'll win, but victory will taste different than you imagined. And in the end, you'll realize that the greatest revenge isn't making them suffer, it's learning to be happy without them. I closed the laptop and walked to the window. Seattle's lights twinkled in the distance, the same view I'd seen the night I left Sarah. But this time, I wasn't smiling. I was just breathing. Existing. Moving forward. Maybe that's what healing really looks like, not the dramatic acts of revenge we dream up in our darkest moments, but the quiet victory of waking up each morning and choosing to live anyway. Sarah had broken my heart, and I had broken her world in return. Now we were both learning to live with the aftermath, two people who had once been everything to each other, now nothing but cautionary tales and fading memories. The rain started again, typical Seattle weather returning after the brief summer reprieve. I watched the droplets race down my window, creating patterns that looked almost like tears. Somewhere in the city, Sarah was probably doing the same, both of us alone with our choices and their consequences. In the end, revenge hadn't made me whole again, but maybe it had cleared the way for something else, something I couldn't see yet. I picked up my phone and texted Patricia back, changed my mind about dinner. Could use the company after all. Sometimes moving forward means accepting that you'll never be the same person you were before the betrayal. Sometimes it means understanding that revenge, no matter how perfect, can't heal what's broken inside you. And sometimes, just sometimes, it means finding unexpected connections in the wreckage of your old life, building something new from the ashes of what you lost. As I grabbed my keys and headed out into the rain, I realized that while revenge might be a dish best served cold, healing happens in the warmth of unexpected friendships and unplanned moments of grace. And maybe that's a better victory than any revenge could ever be.